Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Before we officially start live, though we're still virtual for the time being, our ritual committee wanted to make sure that those who are coming in attendance tonight have our Reformed prayer book. Though we haven't done anything officially yet, I should say that for the record. These are just for us virtually to experience because we're still primarily a virtual service. So hi, everybody, and you'll see the prayer book right above Cantor Whitner's head. For those who are with us, the prayer book, Mishkan Tefillah, should be right in front of you. Cantor, let's welcome us.
Welcome, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. We begin with Hinei Ma Tov. Hinei Ma Tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. 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 How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. Hinei Ma Tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei Ma Tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Shalom aleichem, salam aleikum. Shalom aleichem, salam aleikum. Shalom aleichem, salam aleikum. Shalom aleichem, salam aleikum. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. Hinei Ma Tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei Ma Tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad.
We turn to page 124 in our prayer book, 124. And for those, please join me in this reading together. We enter the sanctuary to welcome Shabbat. Within these walls, we sit surrounded by numberless generations. Our ancestors built the synagogue as a visible sign of God's presence in their midst. Throughout our long history and our endless wandering, it has endured, a beacon of truth, love, and justice for all humanity. Its presence guided our ancestors to lives of righteousness, holding up to them a vision of their truest selves. Now we, in our turn, come into the sanctuary to affirm the sacredness of our lives. May we enter this place in peace. May holiness wrap around us as we cross its threshold. Weariness, doubt, the flaws within our human hearts, the harshness of the weak, let these drop away at the door. In the brightness of Shabbat, let peace settle upon us as we lift our hearts in prayer. And we continue with our candlelight blessing.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher
קידשנו במצוותיו, מציוונו להדליק נר, להדליק נר של Shabbat.
For those who are able, we rise together for Kiddush.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu. בשבת קודשו, מאהבה וברצון הנחילנו, זיכרון למעשה וראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר יציאת מצרים. כיוונו בחרת, באותנו קידשת מכל העמים, בשבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
Amen.
Chaim.
127, we continue. There are days when we seek things for ourselves and measure failure, but what we do not gain. On Shabbat, we seek not to acquire, but to share. There are days when we exploit nature as if it were a hoard of plenty that can never be exhausted. On Shabbat, we stand in wonder before the mystery of creation. There are days when we act as if we care nothing for the rights of others. On Shabbat, we remember that justice is our duty and a better world our goal. So we embrace Shabbat, day of rest, day of wonder, and especially day of peace. And we turn to page 130 with Psalm 95.
Ranena l'Adonai, nariya l'tzur yisheinu, nekadma fanav b'toda, mazmirot nariya lo, ki el gadol Adonai, umelech gadol al kol Elohim, asher beyado mechkerei aretz, betoafot harim lo, asher lo hayam vehu asahu, beyabeshet yadav yatsaru, ki hu Eloheinu ba'anachnu, Amarito v'tzoniato.
We welcome the Shabbat with Lecha Dodi, the pinnacle, the peak of Kabbalat Shabbat.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד השמיענו, אל המיוחד אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה. לך אדוני לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך אדוני לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי היא מקור הברכה. מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשם בתחילה. לך אדוני לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך אדוני לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי. אורי, אורי, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לך אדוני לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך אדוני לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
We rise together to greet Shabbat HaMalkah.
מוי ושלום עטרת מעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך אדוני לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך אדוני לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
We continue, middle of page 145, 145. Teach me, O God, a blessing, a prayer, on the mystery of a withered leaf, on ripened fruit so fair, on the freedom to see, to sense, to breathe, to know, to hope, to despair. Teach my lips a blessing, a hymn of praise, as each morning and night you renew your days. Lest my day be today as the one before, lest routine set my ways. And we continue with our Chetzi Kaddish on the top of page 144.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא תברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי. בחייכון וביומייכון ובחי דכל בית ישראל. בגלה, בגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעלם ולעלמי עלמיה יתברך. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם, וינשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה. בריחו לאלה מן כל מחתה ושירתה, תושבחתה בנחמתה, תמירן בעלמה, ואמרו אמן.
146, and we rise together.
Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared?
There is one who sings the song of his own life, finding everything within himself. There is one who leaves the circle of herself and sings the song of her people. There is one whose voice rings with the song of humanity, hoping for the highest perfection. And there is one who rises even higher, united with all creatures, with all worlds, filling the universe with song. Nevarech, let us bless.
Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed, le'olam va'ed. Yadadai-dai-dai, 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 yadadai-dai-dai.
We turn to page 149, and please join me at the top. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, for whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way in which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, for whom the evening flows. We continue with Ahavat Olam on page 150.
Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael, Amecha ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadeta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu, b'shochbeinu uvkumeinu, nasiach mechukecha, ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד, כי הם חיינו באורך ימינו, ובהם נהגה יומם ולילה. באהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים, ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai, Adonai Echad. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Page 157. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land. The winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there's no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. Our song of redemption, our Michamocha, which we will celebrate tomorrow night, 158.
Michamocha ba'elim Adonai, Michamocha nedar ba'kodesh, Nora tehilot osef ele, Malchutecha ra'uv hanecha, Bokei hayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, Ze'eli anu ve'amru Adonai imloch le'olam ba'ed.
That tune, as many of you may know, is the tune to Adir Hu, and thus is the Passover tune that pervades throughout. If we did a Hallel, which is like the ceremony of praise we would do during the festival holidays, that tune would be incorporated into the Hallel service as well, and thus it is emblematic of Pesach.
161, and please join me at the top. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lay down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will, our Hashkivenu, our prayer that gives us strength at night, 160.
Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, V'hamidenu shomreinu lechaim. Spread the shelter of your peace over us. Guide us in wisdom, compassion, and trust. Hashkivenu Adonai. לשלום. בעמיתנו שומרנו לחיים. Save us for the sake of your name. Shield us from sorrow, hatred, and pain. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu l'shalom. Mehamidenu shomreinu l'chaim.
The top of page 163. We are a people in whom the past endures, in whom the present is inconceivable without moments gone by. The Exodus lasted a moment enduring forever. What happened once upon a time happens all the time. Vishamru, top page 162.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שמת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
Page 165 in the middle, and please join me. Prayer invites God's presence to suffuse our spirits, God's will to prevail in our lives. Prayer may not bring water to parched fields, nor mend a broken bridge, nor rebuild a ruined city, but prayer can water an arid soul, mend a broken heart, rebuild a weakened will. We rise together for tefillah on page 166.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu ve'imoteinu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע. משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי המתים. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
We turn to the top of page 173. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. We continue with what's say on page 174.
Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu be'amcha Yisrael u'tefilatam me'ahava tekabel tehil ratzon tamid avodat Yisrael. Yisrael amecha el karov Afnei elavatecha mechonenu shefoch ruchacha aleinu betechezena eineinu Zion, berachamim, baruch Adonai. המחזיר שכינתו לציון.
the top of page 179. And please join me. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country as a safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among the inhabitants of every land. Plant virtue in every soul. May the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Praise are you, Eternal One, who blesses our people with peace.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Ki ata hu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Atahu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Betov beinecha levarech et amcha Yisrael bechol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם.
We take a few moments for silent prayer.
יהיו רצון אמרי פי, יהיו רצון אמרי פי, מהגיון ליבי לפניך, אדוני צורי וגואלי. Oh, may the words of my mouth, the meditation of my heart be acceptable before you. O God, my rock and my redeemer. Oseh shalom במרומיו, ויעשה שלום עלינו מעל כל ישראל, ואמרו ואמרו
At this moment in our service, we take time to think of those in our community, those who need healing of body or spirit, whether a loved one, a friend, a colleague. On Shabbat, we take time especially to think of Linda Applebaum, Harriet Bagby, Cindy Bailey, Katie Bates, Harold Seitling, Deborah Chargois, Sunita Costa, Melvin Davis, Hannah Lillian Fox, Buster and Eileen Griffith, Eileen Gross, Josie Hatfeld, Bart Kolber, Jerry Lapidus, Wayne Lewis, Jan Milet, Chrissy St. Charles, Mitch Schneiderkraut, Elena Stern, John Olhar, Jesse Weisberg, Elisa Rosemore Whitehead, Teddy Wright, Edgar Zimmerman, and Robin Reese. And since we have people in attendance, if you're thinking of a loved one and wish to share a name out loud, we still can hear you, even while you're wearing your mask, and please share that name as my eyes meet yours. For those names mentioned out loud and for those names that are still in our hearts, our Misha Berach, our prayer for healing, a prayer that always unites us, middle of page 371, 371.
Of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say,
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
I'd like to tell two true stories. The first story happened to take place during my first year in Israel as a rabbinic student in 2008. And we must remember, this is when I was a bachelor and I ordered 14 nights out of 7. That's the joke. But I never cooked for myself. I guess the joke was better on paper. But nevertheless, lack of sleep. I would frequent a small pizzeria in Rehavia, and it's a neighborhood in West Jerusalem. And I'm a creature of habit, so I probably went there 4 out of 7 nights because I was lazy. And I ordered the same cheese pizza every single time. And when I went there, I started kibitzing with one of the workers named Ahmed, an Arab Israeli, who lives in East Jerusalem. And when I would go there, we talked. We reflected about life, his family. I mean, this conversation was about 5 minutes. But nevertheless, I saw him there frequently. This was 2008. Went back to Jerusalem in 2012. I went back to Pizza Panini, which is still there, believe it or not, on Derech Aza in Rehavia. Did you ever go there? It's okay. It's not as good as New York. But nevertheless, I endeavored to see Ahmed if he was still working there. I had a break from a program, and I wanted to see him. I went there. I got that slice, but he wasn't working there. Oh well. A few days later in my seminar, we happened to be at some convention center, and next thing you know, someone was tapping me on the back of my shoulder. And I turned around, and it was Ahmed. And, what are the chances of being in Israel at this specific time? And there he was. And he remembered me. I guess it's the hair. And we never lost a beat. And 5 minutes was great. Reflected about life, and that was it. I went back to Israel 2016. This was a seminar sponsored by the Foreign Ministry, and we were highly structured everywhere we went. I went to that same restaurant, Pizza Panini, and he wasn't working there. I tried again. And then we were having lunch with Israeli rabbinical students, and guess who one of the caterers was? This is a true story. There was Ahmed. And this time it got a little more personal because what are the odds that I would run into him, 4 years apart, actually 4, 4, and 4. We shared stories. He showed me a picture of his family. He wanted me to go to his home in East Jerusalem to get pretty good hummus, but we couldn't. And we swapped email addresses, and we promised that next time that I was ever in Israel, that we would find time and truly connect. And Robert, maybe next year you let me go to Israel, if Rachel lets me. Okay, so that's the first story. Just you never know when these moments happen in life. And here is the second story. In February, I received an email from a colleague informing me that a relative who lives in Israel who wanted to have a child who was able to find a surrogate here in Birmingham. This baby was born early, and the Israeli, he wanted a conversion as soon as possible for returning back to Israel. I received this email on February 17th. This is a Wednesday. Now, the night before, Maisie's water broke. It was a bit of an ordeal in our household, and Rachel was admitted until we were supposed to give birth 2 weeks later, but happened on that Friday night, 5 weeks ago. So when I got that email, I did naturally what I did. I passed it off to someone else. Hopefully someone could take part in compiling these conversion documents for this Israeli. After all, I was too busy, I was too stressed, I had to deal with Lillian, and it was craziness in my household. I'm sure we all understand. When you're at the NICU at UAB, you start off on the 3rd floor. It's real serious. And then you go to the step-down unit, which is called the CCN. And so we were in the 3rd floor serious unit for a couple days, and finally we were able to go downstairs, which was a big sigh of relief. And they give you the tour of the CCN, and there you have the Ronald McDonald House, which is incredible for families. It's empathic, they have free food, and they really take good care of you. And each time you go in, you're required to sign in your kiddos and where you come from. And 99.9% of the people come from Alabama or some of the other southern states. But there was one family from Israel. I still didn't process it. And a few days later, I was walking by, and I heard that accent. He was talking to the nurse about his baby, and I felt as a genuine obligation, I wanted to introduce myself as probably the only Jew in the unit and a rabbi to meet this family from Israel who happened to deliver at UAB, and what were the odds? And then we realized who each other was right at that moment. This was the colleague's relative in need of documents for conversion for his daughter. And this is how it works in the NICU. He gave the documents to our nurse, which were left in our room. I then took the documents to get the remaining signatures from Karen Whitner and from Linda Gutchin to attest to this young daughter of Israel being Jewish. I gave the documents to his nurse, who then dropped them off in his room to be there for his daughter. I got a text later that night from the Israeli, wanted us to send us a meal, but I said, it's our pleasure and honor. We continued to connect at the hospital. We checked in with both of our kiddos, and he should be in San Francisco, where he's at the consulate's office getting the final documents and then heading off to Israel. So why am I telling you these two stories of chance? The great German theologian, Jewish theologian, Martin Buber, believed that we experience God the most when we engage in honest and sincere relationships with whom we encounter, and sometimes with people whom we least expect. This was an Arab Israeli working at a pizza place and who also happened to be a caterer. I happened to run into him 3 times in my life. A rabbi now who lives in Birmingham made friends with an Arab Israeli in East Jerusalem because of chance. And then I met another Israeli who was in need of a document in order for him to return back home with his daughter. Judaism doesn't really believe in luck. There's a famous teaching from the Talmud, Ein Mazal v'Yisrael, there's no luck for Israel. This is for us to reject astrology. That stuff is hocus pocus. Rather, we embrace our opportunities when they are there. For me, especially the past month, the stress of Rachel's pregnancy prohibited me naturally from being there for a stranger. And therefore, my lesson in life, even during our most uncertain moments, we certainly have the ability to bring God's presence into this world. And sometimes we're able to do that by getting a new friend in life, which Judaism calls a treasure. The Jerusalem Talmud teaches us that when we're able to give someone a cheerful smile, we're able to bring God's presence again into our life. It's been a very emotional week for this country. Last week's shooting in Atlanta, this past shooting in Boulder, last night's horrific storms. But these encounters reminded me, and perhaps all of us, that we still have the ability to provide comfort. Maybe it's us taking a few more minutes out of our day to say hello, gaining a new friend as we've been isolated this past year, taking a breath and being there for someone. My lesson as we begin Yontif tomorrow night and celebrate redemption from the shackles of slavery, we all have a lot to be thankful for. But tonight, as Maisie comes home, she came home last night, I'm thankful for Ahmed, and I'm thankful for this Israeli. I'm able to find perspective and being thankful when I need it more than ever. And I want to thank you all for being there for me too during these past 5 weeks. Shabbat Shalom to all of you. Have a wonderful Pesach. Don't forget the Marilax. That matzah. On that note, I'll end with a joke. Shabbat Shalom. We turn to page 586, 586 as we conclude with Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו 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 אחד.
We turn to page 595, 595 at the top. It is hard to sing of oneness when the world is not complete, when those who once brought wholeness to our life have gone, and not by memory can fill the emptiness their passing leaves behind. But memory can tell us only what we were in company with those we loved. It cannot help us find what each of us alone must now become. Yet no one is really alone. Those who live no more echo still within our thoughts and words, and what they did is part of what we have become. We do best to our dead when we live our lives more fully, even in the shadow of our loss. For each of our lives is worth the life of the whole world, and each one is the breath of the ultimate one. And in affirming the one, we affirm the worth of each one whose life now ended brought us closer to the source of life, in whose unity no one is alone, and every life finds purpose. On this Shabbat, we recall the yortzites of Mitzi Jaffe Aarons, Tally Berry, Dorothy Beck, Harvey S. Benjamin, Adolf J. Berger, Edith Kulik Besser, Alice Black, Elizabeth Liz Weidman Bleberg, Richard Bransdorf, Leona Roth Cherner, Stephen Christopherson, Louis Klein, Lucille Zeldin Cotton, Anna Witten Datnoff, Olga Dyer Smith, Gloria Alexander Earthridge, Michael David Fetter, Dave Fisher, Suzanne Gaines, Laura Bell Gill, Tommy Gillespie, Lawrence Goldman, Richard Goldner, Amelia Goldsmith, Seymour S. Green, Gene Hartzell, Edwin J. Hiller Jr., Sarah Friedman Clafter, Sidney Cronenberg, Robert Lewis, Beverly Marks, Elaine Markstein, Shannon Hope Kogan McInerney, Lauren Corman Moran, Sarah Newberger, Moise Newberger, Anna Eisenberg O'Dresen, Pearl H. Perline, Lena Phillips, Sylvia Rafflo, Hattie Reese, Thelma Renaud, Abe Rich, Ann Rosenberg, Benjamin Schultz, Rose Seaton, Bertha B. Shapiro, Mrs. S.A. Shapiro, Carolyn Silverman, Morris Slive, Max Sokol, Stella Bayer Strauss, Dorothy Thompson, Samuel Ullman, Betty Erdong, Adolph B. Wheel, Arthur Weinberg, Max Weinstein, Murray A. Weinstein, Marion E. Wertheimer. Our heartfelt condolences in the recent passing of Kimberly Kraselsky, Robert Bropes, Lee Lichter, Norman Morgan, Sarah Ann Polimas, Max Steinmetz,
Sheila and Paul Klein.
and as a Temple Emanu-El community, we remember those 10 lives who were taken. Officer Eric Taylor, Ricky Olds, Kevin Mahoney, Lynn Murray, Denny Stong, who was 20 years old, Terry Leiker, Traulona Barkowiak, Jody Waters, Devin Stanzik, and Suzanne Fountain. May those lives lost in Boulder, forever be a blessing, and for those names in our Kaddish and recent condolences. We rise as a community for a mourner's Kaddish on page 598. Yikadal Vikadash Shemei Rabbah, Bioma divrach reote v'amlich malchute. B'chayachon of Yom Echon. Uvchayet de kol Beit Yisrael. Bagala uizman kari v'yimru.
Amen.
Yehei shmei rabba mevarach leolam olamei almaya. Yit barach v'yishtabach yit ba'ar v'yit romam v'yit naseh. Vita dar vita le vita lal. Shemei de kutsha.
Barichu.
Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nachumanta. Damin ram bi'oma v'yimru.
Amen.
Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chaim alena ve'al kol Yisrael. V'yimru amen. Osei shalom b'imromav. Huya say shalom. Alena ve'al kol Yisrael. V'yimru amen.
Ose shalom b'imromav, uyase shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, me'imeru. Amen.
Before we conclude with God Almighty on page 625, just two announcements.
It's not on that page, sorry.
It's not on that page, it's everybody can.
666.
666. Two announcements. Next Friday night, as we have Shabbat services, for those who remember last year, I know it was the heart of COVID, but it's new for Cantor. If you guys remember the Omer game, some of us don't remember because we were watching at home. It's a new tradition that we do at Temple Emanu-El. So be prepared for the next 7 weeks, a little bit less than that. We will have the incredible Omer game. Just be prepared. Bring your trivia hat. This is the most engaging time, and it's so much fun, especially for the three of us when we get to be the Socratic question now, okay? The Omer game. Second announcement, because our task force reminds me that I have to do this. It's kind of like Delta. We're deboarding here because of COVID. So for those sitting on this bank, remember to please exit this side, okay? Those in back, there's not many, the back door. Those on this side will do the same thing once this side has already left. I'm not worried about exposure time because we're all vaccinated and it's less than 15 minutes, but I'm still obligated to say things like that. We still have to be rational. Can a winner take us home?
Adirhu, yifne veito bekarov, bimheira, beyameinu bekarov, el b'nei veitcha bekarov, God of might, God of right, we would bow before thee, sing thy praise in these days, celebrate thy glory. When we hear, year by year, freedom's wondrous story.
Chag Sameach and Shabbat Shalom. Or almost Chag Sameach.